Okay, welcome and good evening. My name is Samir Gandesha, and I'm the director of the Institute for the Humanities. Gives me tremendous pleasure to welcome you here or back if you're at the first talk by Fred Kuwornu. Spoke at the beginning of February, and now he's speaking right at the end of this Black History Month. Before I go on to properly introduce Fred, I'd just like to say that I'm speaking from, and this event is being hosted on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Just want to say a few things about some upcoming events. There's an event that's happening on March 12th, which would be a film screening, and the film will be made available about a week in advance of the panel on March 12th. So I guess on the 5th, it'll be made available for people to pre-screen. And it's a film that is about the situation in Brazil and the various kinds of conflicts, theoretical positions, philosophical positions within the Brazilian left that relate to questions of identity and identity politics. So I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion with perhaps many lessons for us here in North America as well as Europe. Another thing that we're keen on organizing, there's nothing that we've put up yet on our website or Facebook page, but we're hoping to do something in cooperation with UBC on the question of police reform. And this is important because right now in this province, for those of you who are not aware, there's been a special committee struck on reforming the Police Act. And this is an ongoing committee that's inviting certain witnesses. I was invited and spoke on Wednesday, and there are other witnesses who will appear before the committee. But they're also canvassing opinion from the public at large. And so if you're interested in the question of police reform, I don't think there's a more important issue confronting us today other than socioeconomic inequality to which police reform is intrinsically related. If you're interested and have some ideas about police reform, you really should contact that committee. All the information is available online. Send them your thoughts, and they will, as they say, take them into consideration in their deliberations. So I think what we want to do at the Institute is have a kind of a town hall where we can air various positions on police reform, what needs to be done, what does it mean to defund the police, what does it mean to abolish the police, et cetera. And then we'll have that, of course, recorded, and we'll send that into the committee, and they can look at that, and they will hopefully take that into consideration. So I think this is one way, amongst many ways in which an institute such as ours can play an important role in public life. Without any further ado, gives me tremendous pleasure, as I mentioned, to welcome Fred back, and just like to introduce him now. Fred Kuwornu is a filmmaker, activist, producer, and educator, born and raised in Italy and based in Brooklyn. His mother is an Italian Jew, and his father is a Ghanaian surgeon who lived in Italy since the early 1960s. Fred holds a Master of Arts in Political Science at the University of Bologna in Italy with a focus on sociology and mass communication studies. Kuwornu produced and directed the award-winning documentary Inside Buffalo, which won the Best Documentary at the Black Berlin International Cinema Festival. Inside Buffalo had viewings at the Pentagon, the Library of Congress, and it received a letter of congratulations by President Barack Obama. In 2016, he released Blaxploitation, 100 Years of Black in Italian Cinema, a diasporic, hybrid, historical, critical multidimensional and cosmopolitan documentary about actors of African descent in Italian cinema. He's developing the project Black IT, the Black Italians Timeline. In 2020, he was a voiceover for the Italian version of the Netflix educational show Bookmark Celebrating Black Voices. Kuwornu believes using film and other art forms are essential tools for building a more inclusive society. And you can find more information on Fred's work and on his biography online. You can go to our website and go to the events page, and you'll find more information through a link there. And I just want to say that Fred's first talk at the beginning of February was just fascinating, and he talked about the African presence in Italy stretching all the way back to the Roman Empire, and provided incredible insight into contemporary politics in Italy, in particular the kind of racialized dimension of the North and South tension that the right in Italy has really exploited. So I especially appreciated that. That was really quite fascinating. So the topic of Fred's talk this evening will be Black Italians and Digital Culture in Contemporary Italy. Before I turn the floor over to Fred, please do use the Q&A section, which you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, Q&A, to ask your questions, and I'll pick them up from there, and we'll direct them to Fred. Fred can also read them as well, and we'll go like that. Fred will speak for about 40 to 45 minutes, and there'll be ample time for questions. I will cut the session off right at 7 o'clock our time, because it's quite late for Fred, and I don't want to keep him up later than he needs to be. So think about your questions and get them up, and then we'll address them to Fred in the Q&A session. So please join me in welcoming Fred Kuwornu. Fred,
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Samir, and thank you so much again to the Institute, because you are so generous to host me, to having me in this amazing program that you organized for Black History Month, but also is inside the program of the year. And of course, there is a lot of support in doing that, and a lot of thanks also by a generation of Black Italians that are trying to find a spotlight, not only in Italy, but also outside Italy, to make much more known that Italy, like I said in the first talk, is not only a multi-ethnic country, but the African presence in Italy is historically a presence that we can trace since the Roman Empire. Even for the majority of people, including the people abroad, Italy, the idea of African descent is that their presence it's only in the last 30 years with the immigration. So tonight, I'm talking really proud of this conversation, because it's also something that I really enjoy as a person, as a human being, and also as an African Italian, to have the opportunity to engage and to tell and to show the story of a generation. Just a couple of things about me, just to remind also my background. My dad came in 1965 in Italy to study medicine. He came in a small city called Bologna. And I grew up in this city, and I attended the school there. And then, of course, also the university. For a lot of time, I felt to be the only one in the room. So not only in my elementary school, but also in the high school. When I say the only one in the room, I felt to be, of course, the only one African descent. I never seen other people that look like me around me. Was so important for my career. And right now that I'm a storyteller and I use visual imaging and, of course, documentary films to narrate the experience of Black Italians, I'm really proud that there is an entire huge generation that can tell their stories. So for this reason, a part of this conversation is entitled Black Italians in Digital Culture in Italy. And of course, also the term Black Italians is very particular, because is a term in which, for example, when I was young, to define someone who was African descent Italian, there was this word in Italian that sounds Italo-Africano. And now inside the new community, in particular inside the new community of African descent, there are two terms to define themselves. One is Afro-Italian, the other is Black Italiano, that is pronounced in Italian is Italiano Nero Italiano. Of course, it's not a definition because people want to separate. It's a definition because still now in the Italian society, the black body is seen as a foreigner body, as seen as something that is outside the narration of the country. And so for this situation, a lot of people started to create a sense of community. But when basically there was this explosion of Black Italians, there is one explosion that is historically, and maybe later on I will show a clip about history. But this is a famous player. His name is Mario Balotelli. Mario Balotelli is not only a famous player. His name has been used by sociologists to define in Italy the generation born by immigrant parents. So what sociology called second generation, in particular because during the year 1990 and 1991 and 1992 are the years in which there is a baby boom explosion of sons born by immigrants, like Mario Balotelli. The parents of Mario Balotelli came from Ghana, and Mario was born in the early 90s in Palermo, Sicily. And it's one of the most famous icons about the sport, the football, but at the same time is an icon for a lot of Black Italians, in particular because Mario is a symbol for many issues that this generation has to deal. So I want to share with you the first clip.
Maybe sometimes it's frustration. Frustration meaning there's no work, there's no job. So whenever I see you coming, of course you coming in my country to work, or you coming, the little food that I have, you coming for it. So definitely I'm gonna hate you. So that is part of racism, and that's part of it.
I felt a little bit alone when I was home, and I always said that if it happened in the stadium, I just do like if nobody say nothing and I don't care. But this time, I think I changed my mind a little bit, and if it's gonna happen one more time, I'm gonna leave the place.
Il fenomeno Balotelli è mio nipote che accende la televisione, vede Balotelli e tifa Italia perché c'è Balotelli. Quello è il fenomeno Balotelli. È mio nipote che si fa ancora la cresta perché si ricorda di Balotelli. Io quando ero piccolino accendevo la televisione e non avevo nessun tipo di riferimento. Ricordo che nella finale del 99-2000 Italia-Francia, io tifavo Francia perché mi rappresentavano molto di più. Mi sentivo più rappresentato, ricordo che ero lì che tifavo Francia, ero l'unico che stava esultando. Uguale nel 2006. Quando è arrivato Balotelli, mio padre, che non aveva mai visto una partita d'Italia, si è guardato tutto il mondo, tutto l'europeo. Perché se Sturridge, attaccante dell'Inghilterra, sbaglia gol, gli si dice sei un coglione. Se Balotelli, nazionale italiana, sbaglia gol, gli si dice non sei italiano.
Of course, I don't know if you are and you like soccer, but this is an important statement. Before sharing the next video, this talk is important. The young guy who was talking about Mario Balotelli is an Italian writer, very young and talented. His name is Antonio Michele Di Stefano. And This is a really important point because, of course, the first issues of the Black Italians youth is the issues of their identity. So the idea that, in one sense, they are not fully included in the Italian society. And for this reason, there was an explosion in the last 7-8 years since Facebook became important. There was an explosion on social media to create a sense of belonging and identity, and also to create a social change. And tonight we'll see some of the history cases that came from social media. In particularly, I'm focused in this first part of the talk in the role of the Black Italian women, the role that they are having as entrepreneurs, as students, bloggers, activists, writers. They really create a huge sense of connection. And I will start with Aida Aisha Bodian. She's Italian Senegalese, and she was the creator of an important blog. The first blog was Afro-Italian Girl, and then she opened other 3 blogs. The last one is Liba World, and it's becoming really popular because it also is an aggregator of other bloggers. This is a part of the series that I'm launching on a website called blackitalia.info. The series is called Black It, the Black Italian Timeline. And there are a lot of episodes, short doc episodes, in which I interview stories, and I'm telling stories, and this is her story.
Reggio a me piace, l'ho vista molto più accogliente, molto più aperta con lo straniero, tra virgolette. Mi piace confrontarmi con chi è differente, scoprire chi è differente da me. La nascita di tutti questi blog sicuramente sono positivi per tutte quelle ragazze che come me comunque avrebbero avuto bisogno di trovare comunque degli esempi positivi, esempi di persone che ti dicano guarda che tu così con la pelle nera sei già bella, tu col capello afro stai benissimo così, non c'è bisogno di lisciarti, non c'è bisogno di sbiancarti la pelle per assomigliare a qualcun altro che poi non sei te. Il tema della diversità che oggi appunto non è solo legato al colore della pelle, ma proprio un concetto molto più ampio, riguarda appunto il background sociale di una persona, riguarda l'orientamento religioso, riguarda il genere, comunque disabilità, la diversità di pensiero. I nuovi media sono una grande risorsa se si sanno come utilizzarle. Nel progetto che sto portando avanti insieme ad altre ragazze, appunto Diversity Hub, noi stiamo cercando di valorizzare proprio a 360 gradi il tema della diversità. I commenti più belli che ho ricevuto sono quelli che dicevano come affrontavo appunto il tema della diversità in modo molto semplice, cercando appunto di guardare la parte positiva delle cose. Abbiamo avuto veramente l'occasione di raccontarci per quello che siamo senza intermediari, comunque senza palcoscenici già precostituiti. La multiculturalità comunque diciamo che è sempre fatto parte della mia vita fin da piccola. Con l'associazione Roots Evolution, che appunto opera nella tematica della diversità, il nostro obiettivo è un po' quello di partire dalle radici per evolversi, ma evolversi comunque mantenendo le radici, quindi abbiamo questo duplice rapporto tra passato e futuro, tra innovazione ed evoluzione, quindi dar voce alle nuove generazioni di italiani di raccontarsi per quello che sono senza dover passare per filtri. E all'interno di questa Afro Beauty Fashion Expo abbiamo raccolto un po' quelle che sono le figure più influenti in questo momento sul discorso beauty, sul discorso fashion. Abbiamo contattato blogger, imprenditrici come Evelyn di Nep Italia, hairstylist.
And this is one of the bloggers that are changing the culture of Black Italians' identity. And she mentioned another one, Evelyn Avafua. Evelyn is an Italian-Ghanaian blogger, but also she's an entrepreneur too. And she launched an important community and product about Afro hair. And this is the Evelyn story that is very amazing.
Quindi avevo da una parte il mio lato africano che ho sempre cercato di nascondere e reprimere, il mio lato italiano che ho sempre accettato, di cui sono sempre andata fiera. Nel momento in cui mi sono dovuta, allontanare dal piccolo paesino brianzolo dove sono cresciuta, lì ho iniziato a notare che non ero uguale a tutti gli altri. Milano ogni giorno mi ricordava che tu, Evelyn, non sei italiana, tu, Evelyn, sei nera. Chi era quella persona che gli altri vedevano? Chi era quella ragazza che tutti incontravano sulla metropolitana, che incontravano in ufficio, che incontravano in università, ma che io stessa non riuscivo a vedere, perché non volevo vederla, perché era più facile vedere la parte italiana che era accettata, che vedere la parte africana che la società non vuole vedere e che io stessa non volevo vedere. Chi era Evelyn? Era semplicemente una ragazza afro-italiana, interiormente, ma esteriormente ho detto, ma i miei capelli devono continuare a nascondersi, ad essere stirati, o forse i miei capelli non li ho neanche mai visti. Capii che non sarebbe mai esistita una Evelyn italiana al 100%, ma neanche una Evelyn ghanese al 100%. Evelyn era un mix di culture, un mix di due paesi, un mix tra Italia e Ghana. Accettai finalmente questa duplice identità, la bellezza di queste sfumature. Quindi ho deciso di smettere con le stirature chimiche e ho deciso di far crescere i miei capelli naturalmente e ho scoperto dei riccissimi afro, dei capelli bellissimi. Insomma, la prima cosa che ho fatto è stata andare su internet e cercare informazioni su come gestire questi capelli, questi nuovi capelli, perché per me erano qualcosa di veramente nuovo. E ahimè, tutte le informazioni che trovai erano in tutte le lingue tranne che in italiano, in francese, in inglese, in americano, ma in italiano non c'era nulla. Nella lingua in cui io parlavo quotidianamente, tutti i giorni, non c'era assolutamente nulla. E mi chiesi, sono forse l'eccezione? Sono l'unica ragazza che in tutta Italia ha deciso di sfoggiare i propri capelli? Insomma, decisi di fare qualcosa. Napi perché è un termine afroamericano che descrive due parole, naturally and happy, che in italiano vuol dire felicemente al naturale, perché io con orgoglio sfoggio questi capelli. E girls perché all'inizio non pensavo che questo mondo potesse coinvolgere anche i ragazzi, ad oggi vi dico che è così. Insomma, questa pagina ha iniziato ad aumentare in maniera molto velocemente, smentendo il mio pensiero iniziale di essere un'eccezione. Ma Napitalia non parla solamente di capelli, parla anche della storia dei capelli afro, perché si è partiti dai capelli naturali, si è passati allo stiraggio e adesso c'è questo movimento che sta tornando indietro al naturale. Ero una studentessa, una receptionist e mai avrei pensato di diventare una blogger, di diventare un'imprenditrice ad oggi, diventare una motivatrice, di avere persone che mi seguono e mi vedono magari come un esempio, accettarsi per quello che si è, per come si è, di non inseguire stereotipi, di non inseguire figure che magari i media ci mandano, ma di essere noi stessi, nella nostra interezza, nella nostra pienezza.
Don't follow stereotypes, but also don't follow figures created by media. And in this case, it works because, of course, the mainstream media they never represented in Italy people that look like Evelyn or me. So why you have to follow people created by media is, of course, a nonsense. This is a great example, the story of Evelyn, of entrepreneurship and blogging. So through the creation of the Facebook page was able to create not only a community, but also a business, and also to fill a gap of market that was not present in Italy, because nobody take care to sell product, and particularly beauty product for African descent, and particularly to take care of her. So basically was also an innovator in doing something like that. Another important blog is Afro-Italian Souls, and this is a blog about, in particular, news, created by two girls that are living in Milan, Bellamy and Grazia. And 6 years ago, she launched the blog, and I tell, of course, again, inside the series Black It, with an episode of their story.
Tipo anche questa frase, immigrato di seconda generazione, ma che vuol dire?
Credo che tu mi seguissi, che tu fossi iscritta al mio canale, una volta hai commentato un video e poi da lì,
parlando, poi ho capito che
ero polentona.
eri polentona, cavolo.
Da lì abbiamo iniziato a commentare nei reciproci video, poi credo che ci siamo scambiati il numero di DNA, tipo...
Sì, ci siamo scambiati i
una
numeri,
friendship.
proprio un'amicizia via web.
So this is how I usually like to wear my hair, in a side ponytail.
Ci siamo entrambe rese conto di avere questa frustrazione in comune di essere italiane ma di non essere considerate italiane, e di non vederci rappresentati in nessun modo, e quindi abbiamo deciso insieme di colmare questo vuoto. L'africano non è quello che è mostrato nei TG o comunque nelle varie trasmissioni. Le nostre telefonate di tipo 2 ore. Una volta ho detto, cavoli, ma perché non fondiamo una piattaforma, un blog dove finalmente possiamo iniziare a costruire la realtà che abbiamo sempre voluto vedere crescendo.
La cosa bella di Afro-Italian Soul, secondo me, è che non parliamo soltanto
delle discriminazioni, non cadiamo nel vittimismo.
Ma stiamo anche per dire che outfit potresti avere, che make-up potresti indossare, i capelli via con natural hair, ma non solo.
Delle coppie miste che mi lascia il fondotinta.
Video sulle coppie miste è piaciuto tantissimo, quindi questi sono i video che sono piaciuti di più sulle coppie miste, perché comunque solitamente si vedono coppie miste in Italia molto adulte, quindi persone che sono sposate, che hanno già figli, e dove la parte di origine straniera è effettivamente immigrata. Invece noi abbiamo mostrato coppie miste italiane e giovanissimi, quindi dai 19 ai 25 anni, non sposati, senza figli, ragazzi che sono nati e cresciuti qua e hanno origine straniera, e quindi abbiamo mostrato come in realtà non ci siano problemi, differenze, barriere tra persone di seconda generazione e gli italiani. La nostra pagina Facebook ha utenti che vivono anche al di fuori dell'Italia, perché vediamo che c'è gente che ci commenta in portoghese, che viene dal Brasile.
Quando ero piccola detestavo i miei capelli, era come se fossi
etichettata come la diversa, come la nera, come quella con i capelli afro. Ho frequentato l'università, scienze politiche, scienze internazionali e istituzioni europee, un percorso diciamo classico. Nasci, cresci, vai a scuola, fai l'università, trovi lavoro e...
Ho fatto all'Università Biotecnologie, triennale a Bologna e specialistica a Roma. Dopodiché mi sono trasferita qui a Milano e ho conseguito un dottorato in patologia.
Che conviene ai media italiani mantenere un'ideologia negativa delle persone secondo me di origine africana.
Non si parla mai di noi o appunto delle seconde generazioni. Quando si cerca di parlare, portare insomma alla luce anche le cose positive in qualche modo, è sempre riguarda sempre appunto l'immigrato appena arrivato, o il clandestino, il profugo.
O che ha fatto un'azione positiva nei confronti di un italiano.
Sì, non lo so,
quindi
è salvato la vecchietta dal ladro.
La realtà è già cambiata, però sono le istituzioni, sono i media, è al vertice che
non viene mostrata.
Non c'è questa voglia di mostrare la nuova faccia dell'Italia.
And also Bellamy and Grace create an alternative storytelling for their generation using the social media, in particular in this case YouTube channel. And at the same time, with this clip, we are able to understand which is the second issues for the generation Balotelli. So the first clips were much more useful to highlight the issues of the networking, the identity, the issues to create a community. The second clip, the clip of Bellamy and Grace, it's very useful to understand the issues of the media representation. So the fact that the Italian mainstream media representation, it's not representing really the real composition of not only the Black Italian youth generation born and raised in Italy, but also in general about the entire Black Italian community. With the next clip and the next story also, and also with the next story of success, we will discover another issue. I'm talking about Antonio Di Michele Di Stefano. You have just seen him when he was talking about Mario Balotelli. Antonio is a writer, producer, but also an entrepreneur. And he started to post a lot of stories in 2014 because he was releasing his first self-publishing book called Fuori piove dentro pure passo a prenderti. It's a sort of novel about a romantic love story between a black guy and an Italian white girl. And he was trying to make success with this book, and post after post, he started to have a lot of followers. So it was a digital marketing strategy, basically, to be independent, being an independent writer. The only opportunity was to use the social media. In this case, Facebook in 2014 and 2015 was a great tool followed by youngs. And so for this reason, Antonio decided to use Facebook. But he decided also to use videos as a way to create content on Facebook to promote a much more better his self-published book. And in particular, there were two videos that were really shared by Black Italians, in particular this one.
Le prime voci che ho sentito quando sono nato erano italiane. Il primo vocabolo era in italiano. Ho imparato a scrivere in stampato e poi in corsivo in italiano, a leggere in italiano, ad amare la vita in italiano, ad odiarla nella stessa lingua. In classe quando ero piccolo mi chiedevano: ma ti senti italiano? E io rispondevo: cosa vuol dire? Perché quella domanda non la facevano a qualsiasi altro mio compagno di classe? Perché proprio a me? Io non mi sentivo né italiano e né un negro come molti mi denominavano. Io mi sentivo incompreso, una divisione. Volevo solo essere chiamato Antonio e che mi chiedessero ti va di giocare. Da bambino nei disegni mi ritraevo rosa, come tutti i bambini, non perché rifiutassi le mie diversità, ma all'epoca mi sembrava normale. Tornavo a casa e piangevo in italiano. Una volta una compagna di classe che mi piaceva davvero tanto mi disse se tu fossi bianco saresti più bello. Per me fu un colpo basso che accusai parecchio. La sera davanti alla televisione, dopo mangiato, prima che mio padre mi mandasse a dormire, lo dissi a mamma e lei sorrise. Disse guardami e dimmi, la mamma com'è, bella o brutta? Risposi senza pensarci 2 volte. La mamma è bellissima. Replicò, ecco, tu mi somigli tantissimo. In quel preciso momento capii che non volevo né essere italiano e né essere più bello. Io volevo semplicemente essere come mia madre, che non era una donna, ma un miracolo. Fuori piove, dentro pure. Posso prenderti.
And his idea to use videos to promote the book was real important for the Black Italian community, in particular with another video that Antonio released some months after, because this video basically synthesizes, it's a sort of a summary of a huge issues that his generation had in Italy, the issues of the citizenship.
Fuori piove, dentro pure. Posso prenderti. Mi chiamano immigrato, ma io da dove sono immigrato se sono nato qui? Io mi sento uno straniero quando sono sul treno e nessuno si siede accanto a me. Quando al bar il classico cliente abituale anziano, nostalgico di Mussolini, commenta dicendo dovrebbero mandarli tutti via. Quando mi dicono ah ma allora sei italiano? E subito dopo mi chiedono se per le vacanze tornerò a visitare il mio paese. Quando mi stringono la mano e si puliscono nei jeans. Quando lei mi dà la mano e la guardano come per dire perché sta con quello. Quando chiamo un'agenzia immobiliare va tutto bene finché mi chiamo Antonio. Poi all'appuntamento sanno solo dirmi mi dispiace, non affittiamo casa agli stranieri. Che suona un po' come mi dispiace ma non affittiamo casa agli alieni. Io non sono un ragazzo di colore. Io non sono un carico di panni sporchi da lavare. E a dirla tutta, io non divento rosso quando prendo uno schiaffo. Fuori da casa mia c'è il mondo. E milioni di persone soffrono a causa delle diversità. Persone che smettono di mangiare perché per la società hanno qualche chilo di troppo, perché le pubblicità ci dicono che dobbiamo dimagrire e non smettere di mangiare schifezze se vogliamo vivere di più. A casa mi dicevano sempre, quando punti un dito te ne tornano indietro 4. Sappi che dipendere dagli altri dipende dal fatto che si ha timore di rimanere soli e che una stella, se vuole, brilla anche dietro le nuvole. Io un po' sono cresciuto, perché se oggi qualcuno mi dovesse dire lo parli bene l'italiano, risponderei anche lei. E se mi chiedessero di tornare al mio paese, risponderei ci sono già.
And of course, I need to do an introduction about this topic because maybe not all of you knows about the citizenship law in Italy, but if you are born in Italy and your parents are immigrants and they are still not Italian citizen because they didn't naturalize, you are not Italian citizen when you are born. You need to wait 18 years to make an application for the citizenship. And still now there is around 1 million of kids born or raised in Italy who are still foreigner in the country in which they are born. So this video was really followed by the generation of Antonio, but also not only the generation of Black Italians, of course, the generation of all the people in second generation in Italy. And this became a sort of success for Antonio. And basically, after the release of this video, came a good news that the most important Italian publisher decided to publish his first self-published book. So basically from the social media, this book entered in the spotlight of the mainstream publishing company in Italy. And after that, Antonio released other 3 novels with Mondadori, and he didn't stop to use his talent. After some year, he met an Italian-Tunisian artist, a music artist. His name is Gali, and basically he decided to support Gali to create a digital marketing strategy for his talent. And in few years, as you see in this title, Gali became one of the most important Italian, but also European artists. It's a great rapper and it's a great artist. Basically, they used the same strategy, so they decided to use YouTube as a way to launch the music of Gali, producing an amazing video clip with a great budget, because they use all the budget that Antonio earned by selling books was used in this music project. The idea was also to exploit not only YouTube but also Spotify, because Spotify was really brand new at the time, and so was another instrument to create and to promote independent music artists. And they decided after a couple of months to release, like Antonio made with his book at the beginning of his career as a self-publisher, they decided to release the first music album of Gali in an independent way. So they self-published also the album, and the album was a huge success, and also the tour of Gali was a huge success.
È il dito medio che rimane su. Bella, sono uscito dalla melma, da una stalla a una stella, compro una villa alla mamma e poi penserò all'Africa, figlio di una bidella, con papà in una cella. Non è per soldi, giuro, wallah. Io sono fuori Brexit, tutto come un backflip. Non sono un politico, io non cerco consensi. Fuck ciò che pensi, terzo occhio dancing. In giro come gypsy, turista in mezzo ai prezzi. Il fine giustifica i mezzi. C'ho stile anche sui mezzi. Ragazzi a pezzi, tutti a pezzi. Torniamo a casa in carro attrezzi. Basta. Nina 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 oh. Oh, oh, questo flow a chi lo do. Oh, oh, con i sogni dentro al biberon, yeah. Rolling, 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 rolling stone. Nina 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 oh.
Ma l'idea nasce da una collaborazione di me e Gali. Gali, quando non era ancora conosciuto, io lo conobbi e gli dissi: guarda, io solo ti posso dare una mano, ti posso dare dei consigli a livello di marketing, perché un po' l'ho studiato, e vediamo cosa ne esce fuori. Ne è uscito fuori un lavoro da milioni di visualizzazioni, un'azienda che adesso ha 4 dipendenti.
And the success of Gali was really terrific. That the most important phone carrier in Italy, Vodafone Italy, asked to Gali Antonio to make a commercial to advertise a pre-played plan for the young teen in Italy. And they replied that they were really happy to do that, but they wanted to do in their own way. So creating a different commercial using lyrics. And so they wrote a specific lyrics for this commercial. And this was basically one of the first multi-ethnic and diverse advertisement that actually and honestly I never seen in the Italian television story of commercial.
Shakerà. Il tuo telefono forse non prende nell'internet. Finiti a fare freestyle su una zattera in Darsena. Oh, oh, quando mi dicono vai a casa. Shakerà. Oh, oh, rispondo sono già qua. Oh, io ti vivi cara Italia. Oh, sei la mia dolce metà. Oh, quando il dovere mi chiama, rispondo e dico son qua. Oh, mi dici ascolta tua mamma. Oh, 1, 2, 3 sono già là. Oh, quando mi dicono vai a casa. Oh, rispondo sono già qua. Oh, io ti vi piccara Italia. Oh, sei la mia dolce metà.
And then he signed a multimillionaire contract because he was just famous and popular, much more than many other people who are in the mainstream since a lot of years. So for this reason, the contract was millionaire. You have to consider that usually major label in Italy, when they signed the first contract with artists, basically they can sign also for 50,000 euros or no more. And basically, I imagine that this experience of second generation behind the scene using social media was really important because they make understand also to the mainstream music industry in this case that was really the case to start to include a new generation of artists in their roster, because this is the generation that every young Italian is playing. They are playing their music, they are following on YouTube, and they are watching their music video. So the work of Antonio in this case was important because he's not only a writer, but basically he's a sort of Italian mogul. And Antonio and his career never ended. So basically, he was also able to convince Netflix to produce a series about young Black Italians. The series is called Zero. And now I want to show you the trailer of the series because it's coming out next April.
Mi chiamo Antonio Di Chele Di Stefano, ho 27 anni e sono uno scrittore. I miei genitori vengono dall'Angola, ma io sono nato vicino a Varese. 4 anni fa ho iniziato a scrivere e raccontare il mondo che mi circondava e non sono più riuscito a smettere. Sto scrivendo una serie per Netflix. Prende spunto dai personaggi e dall'ambientazione del mio ultimo libro Non ho mai avuto la mia età, ma il progetto seriale ha preso un'altra strada rispetto a quella del romanzo. Zero è la storia di un ragazzo speciale, di un ragazzo nero, che ha un superpotere, grazie al quale può conoscere la realtà delle cose, delle relazioni e delle persone, che si nasconde sempre dietro le apparenze. Per me, per un ragazzo nero italiano come Zero, che deve tutto all'Italia, la cosa più bella è che questa sarà la prima serie nella quale i protagonisti saranno dei ragazzi neri italiani. Spero che questo possa aprire una porta a quegli attori, creativi e artisti neri che non hanno ancora avuto un'occasione importante. Spero che questa storia rifletta quella di tanti ragazzi, a prescindere dal loro colore. Ci sarà tanto rap, perché il rap è la lingua della mia generazione. Zero uscirà nel 2020. Spero che vi piaccia.
And of course, for the issues of COVID, the series had a delay in the shooting, and it will be released next April, so not April 2020, but April 2021. And of course, this generation is also really connected, and so this is a field that is unusual because it's a field of visual art, but also there are visual artists that are trying to paint their story, to tell the story of the Black Italian community. So for many years, the story of Black Italians in some cases were narrated by the Italian white community, so with the lens of someone who is trying to create the storytelling of the other. Right now, they are basically taking the control of the storytelling. So it's very interesting because visual art, of course, a contemporary visual artists are really difficult to find in a country like Italy. I'm referring to Black Italians artists in a country that is famous for, of course, its art. because Italy also it's art everywhere. But this was a gap of opportunity also because the generation Balotelli basically is the first generation that also have the tools and the opportunity to attend at some fine art school, and then they have the opportunity to do some works. But in particular, they are doing a great work because they are also trying to make a storytelling of the community. So for this reason, for example, we have this artist, his name is Luigi Beggetti, and Luigi basically it's very inspired by women, in particular black women who are in social media, women who are basically famous, like maybe the bloggers that we've seen, but also the actors. And his work is try to portray their faces and their lives. And so to give a sort of second life and second image into also the visual art, into the galleries. And so it's a great artist, is very young, and just recently made a great solo exhibition. And this was a sort of provocation because this is Matteo Salvini, the leader of an alt-right movement called the Liga North. And basically, it was very nice, the provocation. Beggetti made a portrait of him, painting his face of black, and he put on social media the painting to the offer. Another important artist is Binta Dio. Binta, she's a performance artist, and also she's doing a lot of installation. And also she's trying to represent the condition of especially the black women who precede her, so the generation of black women of the 70s and the 80s. And another one important artist that is inspired also by what happened in the social media and the history of the presence of black African descent who were in Italy since maybe the Roman Empire. His name is Jem Perucchini, and Jem basically is trying to create visual art using the imaging of famous historical African descent. In this case, for example, he used the imaging of Leone Iacovacci, that is he was a boxer this is Leone Iacovacci. He was a mixed race boxer that he won the European middleweight championship in 1927. But he also, Jem Perucchini, painted, this is Domenico Mondelli. Domenico Mondelli was maybe the first European black aviator, because he gained the pilot license in 1914, and he was also a general in the Italian army. So, and this is another hidden story, of course, of Black Italy. This was Suor Bakita. He became a saint, and she is venerated. And this is Jem Perucchini. So this was also to show in a field that maybe sometimes is not associated with social media, how is strong the influence and how Black Italian youth is connecting with each other. It doesn't matter if you are successful in music, but you can inspire someone who is working in other fields. And this happened also with the networking of social media, because everyone is following each other. And so it's an amazing youth that, of course, have an amazing opportunity using in an active way the social media, in a proactive way, also to create a sense of community. And of course, this is expanding also in the activism, but most of these artists are activists because the way in which they are create the storytelling of their generation, and also the fact that they are bringing sometimes very often the issues of their generation, make them activists in one sense without the need to go to create protests in the street or whatever. So this is a great opportunity also for this generation, and for this reason it's very important the idea that we have to bring this talk in many institutions, including, of course, we are approaching the educational system in Italy, but sometimes also we are approaching the Italian studies approach Italy, because this is a part definitely of Italy. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity to give this talk, and with Samir we want to open also the Q&A, and so you can, I imagine, write in the chat your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Fred. What a fascinating presentation, and so much there in terms of the Black presence in digital culture and social media. I think it's quite interesting to have this rather positive view of social media after the last, say, few years, where social media has really been portrayed in a negative light, and I think in part justifiably. But it reminds us as well in this country of how important social media was. In 2012, there was a massive movement across the country called Idle No More that was really led by Indigenous women via social media to mount a challenge to the then conservative government's agenda of extractivism and creating, building pipelines through indigenous lands and so on. So social media played such an important role there. Yeah, thank you. And there are a few other things I'd just like to point to. And then while people, I think, are just thinking up questions and interventions, there was a wonderful piece right at the beginning when we were talking about Balotelli, Generation Balotelli, and about how, when footballers who are of a different ethnic background, when they're doing well, they're one of us. When they miss a penalty, they're foreigners. And we had a very celebrated case, if you can call it that. It was quite an infamous case of a sprinter, Ben Johnson, who I think in the 80s was a gold medalist in the Olympics. And then everybody cheered him and embraced him as a Canadian. But then he fell into a bit of a scandal when it was revealed that he had taken steroids, and he lost his gold medal. And then people were just distancing themselves from him and saying, well, he's from the West Indies, isn't he? He's not really Canadian. So there's this kind of double standard, that is often at play. So I thought of that case immediately. And I think that the case of football is so interesting because it shows, well, just how important the representation of Black and players with Arab backgrounds is in European national teams like France. And the commentary about how it was only after Balotelli was selected for the national team that they started following and supporting Italy. And I think that's really fascinating. But it really also brings to mind the fact that there's so much talk these days in North America. I don't know what it's like in Italy, but there's so much talk in North America about safe spaces and so on, and how it's important to have safe spaces. And I think in certain contexts, it certainly is. It is absolutely important, but there's a kind of fetishization of it. And there's a lack of recognition of the kind of difficulty and challenge and really danger players like Balotelli face when they go out onto a football pitch. And for example, playing against Lazio, which is known for its far-right supporters, to confront that situation takes a lot of courage, but it's so important to do because it then creates spaces for other players who will come along and will really change the culture of the game, right? So I think this is something we shouldn't lose sight of. Anyway, we do have a couple of questions here. The first is from my colleague in the Department of Humanities, who is from Italy originally, Alessandra Capardoni. And she says, thanks for a great talk. And I'm going to read this out just for, I don't know if the actual Q&A is picked up by the video feed. So I just want to make sure that people who are watching it later can can hear the question and can understand the question. So I wanted to ask whether the new artists/activists have full control over the production and distribution of their work. I remember, for example, that when the movie Pumaro came out, one of the critiques was that the director had not sufficiently consulted with the community, and both production and distribution was outside of their control. Very interesting question. Thank you, Alessandro. And then I'll read out the second question afterwards. So go right ahead.
Yeah. But just for the audience, thank you, first of all, Alessandra, for this question. For the audience, Alessandra is referring to a film called Pumaro. Actually, it's a film that I like it because it has been directed by an actor who became also a great director. And I think it was his first film as a director, and was based on a real story, basically the story of a South African refugee. His name was Jerry Maslow, that has been killed in 1989. He was a refugee who came in Italy to ask for asylum. He had a lot of difficulties to have asylum, so basically went to the south to work in the agriculture as a tomato picker, and he was killed by the crime organization in Naples because he created a sort of movement who wanted to protest about the bad condition, how Africans were treated in the south. And actually, after his murder, there was a huge demonstration in Italy, maybe the huge demonstration anti-racism that Italy never seen before. So Michele Placido made a film not about him, but inspired by this story. It's a fiction film in which the main protagonist is a Ghanaian actor. And surely I think, is the normal behavior, by the way, of many Italians, directors, screenplayers, or many people who work in the film industry. By the way, they never consult subject or community. So in this case, I don't think that they never consulted the Black community. Everyone has the assumption, but I think it's very common in many countries, to have the freedom to represent the other without knowing nothing of the other. So why this generation is important? Because it's the first generation who are taking control. I don't know if they are in control of the distribution, but I take in control with the social media of many aspects. First of all, the storytelling. So this is very important for me. And this was the mistake that had been made in Italy by many, in many fields. So not only entertainment, sometimes also education, politics. So everyone sometimes think to be a storyteller of the other. And the issue is that no one, until maybe now that there is a conversation and discussion, ask genuinely himself or herself if they were doing right also. Because me too, when I'm trying to give a talk or a documentary about the Black community in Italy, I'm always questioning myself if I'm doing some mistakes or if I can interact much better with the people of the community, because also the community or the African-Italian community in Italy is very diverse. There are people from different backgrounds of country of origin, so West Africa, Eastern Africa, Central Africa, Caribbean, Brazil, and also the religion. So half of the Black community is Muslim, another half is Christian. So it's not a monolithic, homogeneous experience that you. So also myself, sometimes I have to ask a lot of questions how. Or if the case, in some cases, if I can represent something, or if I can tell something, or sometimes I say, no, wait, this is not a part completely of my background and story, and I can produce stories sometimes, but sometimes I like to inspire other people to do the same, so to tell their own story. So, and it's better because we need much more voices.
Thank you very much. There's just a question about the first female blogger. Could you just type that in? Would you mind just typing that into the chat?
Yeah. Okay, Karen. Karen, I would like to follow the first female blogger that Fred showed. She's so inspiring. Could you repeat her name for me, please? I type in the chat is Aisha Boldian. It's and this is another. It's a great story, but is a story. Aisha basically moved to Paris right now, and this is a part of this generation, the start of this generation. The start of this generation, it's not only that they are in Italy, but for many reasons they move abroad Italy because, as you see, one of the most issues is the citizenship. And some of them became welcome in other countries, or they have ties with other countries, and so they move outside Italy. And so if you go to London, you will find a lot of African Italian of this generation in the streets of London. So maybe you will hear someone speak Italian, and when you turn your face, you will see that he's black or she's black. And some of them move also to Paris. Then I see the question of Shiraz. What is the relationship between diplomatic ambassadors from Africa and Afro-Italian communities? Are the same relation I think that diplomats have with their own, or sometimes people that are descended from their own countries. So basically, they are there just for the relation of work, but I don't think they have. There were a lot of episodes of racism or situations that were really bad that I never seen a lot of African embassies in Rome protest or say something. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there is also a situation of, I don't know if it's a sense of guilty or other, because this is another talk and I don't want to open to things, but as a partially I'm also Ghanaian, and as a Ghanaian, I'm really sad about how African government, by the way, are reacting to the phenomenon of, in this case, immigration from Africa to other countries, and the fact that also what's happening in Libya, in which immigrants are treated like slaves, and no one, rarely a president of an African country says something. So this is, I think, a real complicated situation. And of course, they don't take action in Italy to say something. And Marion, Mr. Kuwornu, this has been so interesting. I was in Italy, Milan in the 70s because my mother was modeling there. There is much uprising among young black women around the world right now. However, we do not see the representation from Italy yet. Black fashion models set many avant-garde trends. Yeah. Okay, it's so interesting to see this new generation of young black Italian women and how they are very much a part of the tradition of fashion, forwardness, and trend-setting. It makes me wonder how much the suppression of black representation in Italy is rooted in the denial of Italian history and genealogy with African people over centuries. Yeah. And I didn't put a clip, but also there is a generation of black fashion designer, of course. One of this is Stella Jeanne. She's an Haitian Italian. Before opening her brand, she was a designer for Giorgio Armani. And just, I think, 3 weeks ago, if you Google, you will find some report. There was the Milan Fashion Week, and there was a digital event called Black Italians That Matter in the Fashion Industry, organized by Stella Jeanne and other 4 Black Italian designers. And inside the Black Italian designer community, we need also to include African-American designers who are settled in Milan, in Italy. There is Jeff Buchanan, that is the owner and founder of a brand called the Sansovino, and also Virgil Abloh, the Ghanaian-American designer, that is also the artistic director of Louis Vuitton. He opened and based in Milan his own brand called Off-White. So there is also a connection between African American and Black young generation inside the fashion industry. And then,
and then
yeah.
Christina has a question, and then we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, the other question, I see Hilda.
Yeah.
Oh, Shiraz, maybe Hilda, thanks for a very interesting talk. I found interesting the reflection on Black Italian image in the Facebook short you showed. How important is image and aspect the image, often superficial when you are a minority for feeling recognized. Yeah. Social media, by the way, gave this kind of tool that I didn't have, but also the generation who followed me, so the generation of born in the 80s and then they didn't have at the time. So if you try to make a storytelling of your community, you need to mediate by the mainstream, and you need to be you need to knock a lot of doors, but no one opened these doors. So there was a lot of limitation, and also in my fields, in the visual imaging, by the way, also the cost of the camera, print films or whatever was expensive. Now, of course, the technology and social media is a huge, powerful tool for also people like me who want to create a visual imaging of the storytelling. And what is the collaborative relation between African and Asians in Italy? Unfortunately, there is any collaboration. And I think another aspect of Italy is that we need to mobilize much more better the racist relation and the ethnicity relation, especially for those who are foreigner or second generation in one unique, strong, I don't want to say movement, but way of act, because in these cases, it looks like the issues of diversity in Italy, or to have much more diversity, is only because between white and African Italians, but it's not like that. So, of course, we need to involve a much more better the understanding that more segment of the society can work together. And it's not only ethnicity, it's also religions, because another part of Italians is Muslim, and Muslim are Asian, are Africans, but and they have the same issues of representation. But there is this misunderstanding, and so we are not able to create a unique situation.
And Christina Silverius has a question. It's in the chat.
Yeah, I'm trying to find Christina. Oh, I can't find Christina. Can you read it? Yeah.
Fred, can you tell us a little bit about your future plans? I think this is a good question on which to end. Is the current focus still predominantly on telling digital stories of Black Italians? What are your own creative plans and projects for the immediate future?
Yeah, I'm very focused on creating a future in the future called like the series, like the short doc series. So Black, it will be not only a short doc series. The idea is to make a short series to give the time to create a community around the series. But of course, I want to develop into a feature documentary that tells much more about the connection between present and history, past, and the presence of Africans since the Roman Empire. The other project, I'm co-producing a series called Mom and Daughters, and I'm supporting the director. She is an Italian Dominican filmmaker director based in Los Angeles. Her name is Lara Petrone, and we are doing a series called Mom and Daughters, interviewing stories of Afro-Latina Italian moms and daughters. Because the other aspect that we are not, and maybe I need to develop much more, but I made a statement before, is the variety of being Black in Italy. So there is not only the declination about the religion, so a Black Italy that is Muslim and a Black Italy that is Christian, but it's also a Black Italy that is Latina, so a Black Italy that came in particular from Brazil, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. And we are in the second or third generation also about this. So for this reason, I'm really helpful, I think, to support also other stories. So my intention is also to create co-production, and eventually I'm looking at the story, but and cross the finger. But there is also a fiction story that I would like to develop. It's a biopic about the boxer Leone Iacovacci. So we'll see.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Before we wrap, I'd just like to make reference to something that very much in the same vein in which you're working, Fred, and maybe you know of this. I just found out about it last week. It's called Small Axe. Do you know of this?
Yeah.
Made by Steve McQueen, Black British filmmaker. And it's a fascinating set of, I think, 5 films that document the West Indian experience in England from, I think, 1969 to 1982.
Yeah.
The first couple of episodes the first episode that I watched dealt with Darcus Howe, who was very involved with this journal called Race Today, and his kind of leadership in this court case against police harassment and brutality of the West Indian community. It's very interesting, and I highly would recommend that as well. It's unfortunately it's on Amazon Prime. Like, it's such a very interesting program on a somewhat I don't know, dubious platform. But what do you do? Thank you so much, Fred. Fascinating discussion, as was your first one. And I've just been reminded to let people know that if they'd like to see that presentation, it's now available and it's on our website. Because Fred goes into, as I said at the beginning, the history of the Black presence in Italy that goes back millennia, and it's really worth checking out. So thank you very much, Fred. I really appreciate.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you. You are so generous, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'd like to thank everybody as well for being there and for the wonderful questions and comments. So come back and see some of our other events in the future. Good evening. Have a great weekend. Bye.